All right, so welcome to our third and final installment of our podcast series on the military-industrial complex. For this last one, what we really wanted to touch on was kind of America and our role in the world as the world police. And so, Nick, I know when I say world police, it automatically reminds you of that one movie, Team America, World Police.
Oh, heck yeah.
Kind of a satire on this whole America is around the world all the time policing. So what points do you have on that?
Yeah, so this kind of is almost a growth from what we talked about before. America is a threat to democracy. Our military is a threat to democracy, except for instead of being in the U.S.,
just expanding.
It's in the world. You look at all the major military interventions that we've performed since Korea on countries. I have a whole list here, and it's really stinking long. We've got, the Vietnam War, obviously.
Are these going to be all the official ones or all the unofficial ones?
There's some unofficial too. Okay. Vietnam War, Persian Gulf, Iraq twice. Then we did anti-communist support in Cuba multiple times, Thailand, Laos, Congo, Dominican Republic, Cambodia, El Salvador, Grenada, Honduras, and Panama, just to name a few. And those are only the ones where our troops actually went into the country and invaded. And in every single one of those instances, what followed? Instability. Almost always, it was followed by some sort of totalitarian regime.
To fill that power vacuum that was left behind.
Exactly. Biggest example that I can think of right off the top of my head, and I have it written down too, is in Iraq. When we took out Saddam in Operation Iraqi Freedom, as a result of that, ISIS was born. I mean, they surged to power about 7 years after we cleared out Saddam, and they came to power because there was that vacuum that we left, where we tried to install a government and we couldn't.
It just didn't work. Yeah. Once upon a time, Nick, we were really good at nation building. I mean, look at Japan. After World War II, completely wiped out and everything. It was a war-torn country, and we spent the time rebuilding it. Look at Germany, too. We had a very heavy hand in helping them rebuild. So what do you think changed for us being world police? Well, do you think it was the rise of kind of communism and our focus more on that rather than building the nation?
I think that's a huge part of it. I think that we became really self-serving in our foreign policy.
Okay.
It became less and less, because when I think about Germany and Japan, what was one of the big motives there was to go in and rebuild the country in such a way that it would never happen again. We learned our mistake from World War I, which was never leave a country completely decimated.
Yeah.
Because what rises from that? Literal Nazis, like the actual Nazis.
Yeah.
Right? And so we went in and we said, we don't want that to happen again. We want to make sure that these people, even though we were just at war with them and we killed 50 million people thanks to these guys, we got to make sure that, they're in a position where another dictator doesn't rise to power. The difference is when it came to the communist part, all we cared about is, will you work with us?
Yeah. Kind of using these countries as a means to an end, rather than, like you get, building them up. And those two countries as examples, Germany and Japan, kind of like the ideal countries of what we want when we rebuild up. Because right now, if you look currently, they're pretty close allies with the United States. But again, all the other countries you mentioned, Vietnam, Cuba, Iraq, they're still feeling the effects of the United States.
Yeah. And, a great example is in Iran, the Shah. We helped the Shah stay in power, not through direct military intervention, but through support with, we sent him money and weapons, right? And he was a lavish, disgusting dictator. But we upheld him because he didn't like communism.
Yeah, and it was that one thing that we upheld, which kind of made the rest of the country suffer.
Yeah. And then what came of that? Eventually we had that huge revolt. We had the Iranian hostage crisis because of it.
Yeah.
Ayatollah Khomeini comes in. It becomes a secular government. There's a bunch of unrest, killings, and now Iran is not the stablest place in the world.
No. I mean, kind of that whole region of the world has been unstable for the last, you could argue, 20 years. Probably even longer than that.
Yeah, longer than that. Before
Yeah.
2000, you look at Saddam invading Kuwait, which is the reason that we went to Iraq in the first place in Operation Desert Storm and Sabre.
Yeah.
I mean, if we want to talk about America flexing its military muscle in a more justified way, I'd point to that as the first example. Is we went in when Iraq, against requests of the international community, went in and invaded Kuwait and was taking away their sovereignty. And Kuwait was like, could you please not do that? And the UN sent in a task force, which the United States was pretty much the leader of.
Yeah.
And we went in quickly, removed them from Kuwait, and let them, go back being free the way they were before.
Yeah. One of the last great military interventions of the 20th century, you could say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was 1991. That was, 30 years ago now almost?
Yeah.
But you look at the other ones we do, and I keep going back to this, it's just, it was so different. It was less about trying, because we say that we're out there to defend other people's freedom, and we're trying to create a free world. Right? That was the whole thing with the fight against communism, is we wanted to maintain freedom. Communism established this evil totalitarian state. The more I learn about how the communist countries ran and the people that ran them, the more I hate them.
Yeah, yeah.
It's despicable. But just because your enemy is despicable does not mean you're justified being despicable as well. And the thing is that we used our military, we used this thing that's supposed to be this bastion of peace and democracy to oppress, hurt, and extort and abuse millions of people in these countries, especially Latin America. I mean, the United States has a long history of kind of being the abusive stepfather to the rest of the Americas.
Latin America country. Yeah. Yeah, we've had our hand in nearly everything. And I guess looking to today, and I guess we can use Afghanistan for an example. Since we are so involved in these countries, what can we do? What is the solution to this problem? Because again, if we were to pull out immediately right now, there'd be that power vacuum again. And so is there really a clean exit to this, or what do you think? It's a really tough question, because all of these situations are just so complex.
And complex problems require complex solutions. And you're asking a question that people who have doctorates in political science can't answer. And here I am, a college student trying to answer this question for you.
So kind of, I guess, to frame it in a different way, would you say the military could be a hammer, and not every problem is a nail that we can solve with it?
Oh, 100%. And even Eisenhower said that. I mean, I bring him up again because this is a guy who was head of the Allied forces in the European theater in World War II. I mean, he's a career military man, 5-star general, 5-star. That is the highest honor you can pretty much have in terms of one of the highest ranks, if not the highest rank. I don't know much about military ranks.
George Washington's always on top.
Okay, well, right below George Washington.
Fact.
Right below George Washington, right? And yet he comes through and he says in his address that perhaps we should look to use our peaceful methods and goals so that security and liberty may prosper together. Right? The first way to solve a problem is to admit that there is a problem. That's the first step always. So getting that out there, getting the education out there, and then maybe we can finally look at, I'd say the next step is establishing new foreign policy objectives.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, because currently there are members of our government who argue that we should be able to fight a two-front war at all times. Okay, that's a little excessive to me. Maybe what if we said that our military should simply be for national defense and that we limit our interventions like so many other countries do? That is a potential policy. Now, of course, there are side effects to this.
Yeah, and we're trying to wrap it up, trying to keep it short. And again, these are all topics we can certainly go on tangents on. I guess your interpretation of national defense would differ, and it differs between people. Because national defense for some people could look at the Bush Doctrine. For sure, that's a big one. That was in the name of national defense.
Yep.
But, yeah.
I would not be a fan of that. I don't like the preemptive strike doctrine. It's very Orwellian, honestly. It's like, I think you might be thinking something seditious, so you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to kill you before you get the chance to act out the thing that you might be thinking of doing. That is Thought Police 101. That's horrifying.
Yeah. Yeah, and it really raises some questions about it, but it happened. So, again, back on topic to wrapping this whole thing up before we get wrapped up into another topic, which I'm sure me and you can certainly do. Making people aware of kind of this process, and you can only really enact change from within. So electing leaders and senators who kind of repel this system, would you say would kind of be?
Yeah, and that's not easy to do, right?
No.
The way our party structure is set up right now, the two-party system, the party has to screen the candidate. I don't know how, but honestly, with every problem that seems insurmountable, it's take it one step at a time. And I think the first step is just to get the word out there that we do have these problems, and maybe, we should try to work to solve them, because I'm sure there's someone out there who's smarter than me or understands this better than me that has an idea that I don't have.
Because again, we're just college students at this moment, but we are the future of this nation. And so having this is kind of our PSA and getting this information out there so that people are kind of aware of the military-industrial complex and have a background of what this actually means. So any closing statements you have for this?
It's something that will not go down easily, that has become ingrained in our culture. And again, I just say that we need to take a critical look at ourselves and say, are we really fulfilling those ideals that we set out to?
Okay, yeah.
And we should constantly be policing ourselves so that we do be the America we want to be.
The ideal shining light in the world. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a very satisfying end to our conversation. Kind of came full circle. Yeah. All right, so this concludes our podcast of the military-industrial system. Maybe we'll do something else in the future. This is really fun.
This was pretty fun.
Yeah, start something, obviously. So, once again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening to our opinions. Again, these are our own and do not reflect any organizations that me and him may or may not reflect. And we invite you to kind of form your own opinion, do your own research on the military-industrial complex. So again, education about topics of these, it's crucial to really understanding them and making change if you so feel that change is necessary. So, thank you.